Welcome to Business Rockstars. I'm Alex Worley, joined by Bert Jacobs. He is the Chief Executive Optimist and co-founder of Life is Good. Thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure, Alex.
Okay, let's address that title real quick. Chief Executive Optimist, what does that mean?
Well, I think the most central element of our brand is to the idea that optimism is powerful. So just figured rather than the C-level title, we'd have some fun.
That's awesome. Okay, so what is Life is Good for those who aren't familiar?
Life is Good is a lifestyle brand. So we make clothing and greeting cards and wall art and home goods, etc. But all of those things are just a vehicle for spreading positive messages.
Would you consider yourself an entrepreneur?
Sure.
So what does being an entrepreneur mean to you?
It means that you started something that didn't exist before. So it means, in my opinion, that you're probably an optimist, because optimists tend to see opportunities where other people see obstacles. So I think you see an opportunity in the market and you begin something that didn't, so a product or a service that didn't exist.
Along with optimism, what would you say that it takes to be a successful entrepreneur?
I would say a lot of hard work, and then I think a bit of humility, because you have to be willing to continually change and learn. Because you can't do it all yourself. And in particular these days, I think anybody that thinks that they're going to build a brand on their own is out to lunch. I think you have to enable your customers to help you build it. Mm-hmm. And so you got to be a good listener.
So if you could go back in time and give your early entrepreneurial self advice, what would it be?
I think the first thing I would tell myself is try to connect with the people who are your customers that are the most fascinating and tell their stories. So it's taken us a long time to get there, but it's what we're doing a lot these days, and it's very effective. And we did it in the early days, but we just really didn't do it confidently. We just kind of, stumbled into it. When I look at it now, I think you always have to say, well, what's the most important thing, and how do you build this community? And, I think the lesson we learned is it's not about us. It's about the receivers of the message. So, there's remarkable people everywhere, and listen to them, see what adversity they've faced, what challenges they've faced, how they overcame it, what was the role optimism played in their life. And and then try to spread those stories.
Yeah, community is a big buzzword right now, especially in marketing. And I think it's reflective of the fact that people are craving community. There's obviously a need for it. You've successfully created a community. How do you think you do that in an authentic way?
I think the authenticity came from, we made a lot of operational mistakes, and we did dumb things, like we single-sourced in a factory and went many months without delivering a single T-shirt, probably 4 or 5 months, which was the only product we had. Lots of operational mistakes, but I think that our customers we never tried to be anybody else. We always believed in our own brand and our own concept. And so the authenticity came from being a little rough around the edges and not trying to kind of make believe we had everything figured out. And as a result, our customer base taught us a lot. And they taught us a lot about values, human values, which is essentially what our brand is about. It's about emotional health, It's about the idea that optimism isn't a soft philosophy. It's a pragmatic strategy for approaching life.
Yeah, so understanding what's at the core of your brand, and for you guys, that's emotional health. And then what I'm also hearing you say is that you were very transparent about the journey. You weren't pretending to have it more figured out than you did.
Yeah, we weren't afraid to ask questions and say we don't know. And our customers often appreciated that, and they participated. They got really involved. So things became important elements, like gratitude became a big part of our brand, because enough customers talked about it. And a sense of humor. We always cracked jokes, and we might not have been the smartest guys, but we were always pretty funny. So that became part of the brand, and everyone asked for more of that. They didn't necessarily want us to be the strongest or the smartest or the fastest. They liked us being funny and making fun of ourselves. So
That's
we
awesome.
listened to that, and we said, okay, let's do a little more of that.
Let's crack some jokes.
That's right.
So if you could create a startup toolkit, what would be inside of it, either tangible or intangible?
I don't think you need money, despite what everybody
Ooh, want to hear more about that.
I don't think you need money because I think money finds good ideas. Okay, so you need a balance to yourself. So in that toolkit, if you're a real creative person, but you're not a strategic operational person, then you either better have somebody in that bag or you better have a method to recruit somebody in that bag and at the level where they can be your partner.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You need to be both creative but also analytical. So to your point, if you don't have those two things, then, really develop a well-rounded team.
Yeah, and it's very rare.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and come back, talk more about building the business. I'm Alex Worley, and this is Business Rockstars. Welcome back to Business Rockstars. I'm Alex Worley, joined by Bert Jacobs. He is the Check This Out Chief Executive Optimist and co-founder of Life is Good. So go ahead and tell me the key partners and leadership, and then also, your employees and kind of what departments they encompass.
So our president, her name is Lisa Tanzer, and she's far better at management, operations, and just business development than my brother and I. We're stronger at ideation, at creativity, at maybe articulating what our brand is about. But we need each other. You know what I mean? And then from there, Lisa has a team of 8 department leaders that represent the 8 departments of the business. And each of them has to be very strong strategically, and they have to be great managers of their teams. And there has to be unity on the long-term vision. And there has to be real clarity of the roles, right? So one thing I think we didn't have early on, and maybe all the way midway through our journey, but recently we've really focused on it, is 2 things, clarity and accountability. So I think those things are enabling us to move faster. And while they seem like constraints, they're not. They really grease the chains on the bicycle. They really move things forward. So if between you and I, or between my brother and I, we don't exactly know, which we didn't, what our roles were, well, I'll walk into a meeting and explain something, and 20 minutes later, my brother will come in with different ideas. We're both founders. We have different, enjoyable titles, but nobody knows what to do. So we got real focused on creating clarity and reinforcing that clarity every single day so that everyone knows what their job is, what's expected of them, and then accountability, good or bad.
So give me an example of how accountability works in your company.
Accountability? Okay. So if somebody goes out and beats their plan for the quarter, right? And everybody has a plan. It's not about salespeople. Everybody, the IT department, the marketing department, the operations, everybody has measurable plans. Everybody wants to tell you this isn't measurable, that isn't measurable. Everything's measurable, right? So if they go out and they beat it, they ought to get a nice bonus for that. It's not 100% of their bonus, but it's a good piece of it, right? Now, if they beat that and the company goes out and beats their plan, if their department does, personally they do, and the company does, then they've got all 3 parts. They ought to get 100% of a really big bonus.
So it's really rewarding people for their accomplishments.
Not only rewarding. So let's go the other direction. So let's say that they fall down really hard and they come to you with the reasons why, and they say, we need to hire more people. In our opinion, they're the ones who built this plan. They own it, right? So they don't deserve to hire new people. That you're throwing more money at it is something we did in certain years, but we've learned through the years. Let's reward the parties that went out and did what they said they were going to do. And for the departments and individuals that didn't, they don't get it.
Do they get punished?
Well, sometimes they lose their job. Yeah, I mean, that's reality. Everybody wants to think the job. Yeah, the world's competitive. And in free enterprise capitalism, you can't just have everybody along for a free ride. We had a lot of years where we had a lot of cousins and people we met in the pub and people on our softball team that were running departments and working at the company. As a typical entrepreneur, you don't know how to recruit. But I think these days, some of those people have really lasted and matured and grown, and it's our job to continue the upward mobility of their careers. But it's their job to play a role in that too.
So where is there room for having an entrepreneurial spirit where you do take risks, you do have those many mistakes, those many failures? How can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. I think there should be in every plan that you build plenty of elasticity where there's opportunities to take risks, but not wildly take risks to the point where you're not valuing the plan that you laid out. So you have a goal, you have goals, and you ought to go out and try to accomplish those goals. And you can't just say, well, it's an entrepreneurial venture, so, we don't have to pay attention to those things.
Yeah. You alluded to the fact that you've hired friends and family before. Is that a good idea? What advice do you have for entrepreneurs when considering doing it?
Yeah, it's neither a good or bad idea. I think in other words, some of it's worked out great and some of it hasn't. But I think regardless of whether someone's a relative or a friend, real clarity as to what's expected of them, and the fact that you're running a business as part of that clarity, and that nothing's a free ride, that's important.
Yeah. Coming up with the capital is always a challenge for entrepreneurs. Any advice when it comes to securing funding or just in general funding?
I mean, it depends on
business?
what your ultimate goals are. Okay, so if your goals are within a short term, 3 to 5 years, to flip your business or go public, you're probably not going to have much choice but to take on outside capital. When you take on outside capital, you better expect to lose some control over your mission and vision. Generally, when outside capital comes in or when you go public, everything becomes about dollars per share per quarter. So for those like us that want to maintain control over your little baby and, be able to go in a small room like this and make decisions about what you want to do with it, you have to make a decision to curb your growth at times. So there were times where we could have grown by 200-300%, and we grew by 50%. But today, it's decades later, and we own 100% of the business. So for us, it was the right strategy. Nobody can answer or give a magic potion for what you should do about funding. It all depends on where you want to go.
Yeah, I like what you said about it depends on what your goals are, because I think it's easy to take on other people's goals of, the sexy thing to do is to raise X amount of millions of dollars,
Right.
But in your case, that's not what your goal was. You wanted to have the control. You had this bigger vision that didn't necessarily mean taking on investors.
Yeah, I just came from an event and I heard a lot of people kind of celebrating. We just did a first or second or third round and we raised $20 million. I mean, that can be a good thing. It's fine to celebrate it, but it doesn't mean anything's been accomplished.
Yeah,
Nothing's been accomplished. What's been accomplished is you've taken on some debt. You know what I mean? So now you got to prove what are you going to do with that money. You know what I mean?
For sure. And your vision better align with your investors' vision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome stuff. Well, thank you so much for stopping by today and sharing your insights. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Alex.
I'm Alex Worley, and this is Business Rockstars.